Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, founder of Sound by Sid and editor of the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast, Sidney Evans. Hey, what you drinking? Yeah, I'll tell you, there is a difference, and I actually shared this with a client today. There's a difference between a senior vice president of finance and a CFO. They both deal with numbers, but a senior vice president of finance is focused on getting the numbers right, making sure that the numbers are right, that their function is taken care of. A CFO is really about thinking about what these numbers mean for the future and where should we be moving the organization in order to make sure that this number continues to be on the positive side and that we're making good investments for the company. And so I bring that back to what you just said. You can get anyone to edit a podcast. Heck, I was doing that myself. I was editing a podcast. But when it was time to take this to the next level, I really needed a thought partner. There have been many times where I've come to you and I've said, hey, look, here's where we are. Here's where I'm trying to go. What are your thoughts? What's going on out there? Where's the industry moving? Should we be using different technology? And that's what you get when you work with someone who takes this thing seriously, such as Sidney. And I've appreciated that aspect more than almost anything. I'm curious. And this part of the show, what is your invisible board of directors? Who are some of the folks that are on your invisible board of directors? And kind of a reminder to the audience, this is straight from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, but where he calls this part his invisible counselor, his invisible counsel. I call it your invisible board of directors. And these are folks living or dead, folks that you've met or maybe you've just read about, but you would anticipate how might they approach different situations, and you use that anticipation to help guide decisions that you have to make in life or in business. So who would be some of the people on your invisible board of directors and why?
Well, I have three people, and these are all two of them I know personally, and one is vicariously. But the first, who I made reference to earlier in the episode, is my junior college coach, Bill Lewitt. He, well, first and foremost, like Cecil College is literally like in the middle of nowhere, and it's like a 95% town, 95% white town, and all his teams are 99.9% black. So just his personality and how charismatic he was and how influential he was is to get people to be able to come there and play for him. Early on, let me know, it's like, okay, there's something to this guy. And once I get there, I'll see it firsthand and kind of have more of an understanding. But the reason I say him first is because he taught me probably one of the biggest principles in life that I have learned thus far is that in order to get what you want, you got to help people get what they want. And I would say he was one of the most giving, unselfish people that I know, but he was massively successful. So obviously anyone with common sense can make the correlation between the two. So he's always going to bat for people. He's always, I don't know if people know, but in the junior college ranks, a lot of people, it's usually not their first choice. Usually something happened, whether it's, they left the school, or maybe they didn't get the look that they wanted to get, or maybe they made a bad decision and, they're looking for a second lifeline. So for him to take a chance on kids and kind of see that they can, recover from their mistakes, or he sees the potential that they may have not actually realized at their current time. It just taught me a lot about, being unselfish and, I gotta allow people grace. And as a secondary result was the massive success he had. He's one of the most legendary junior college coaches that exists. So I would say him first and foremost. The second was my assistant coach who recruited me to Fayetteville State, Jay Maynard, who I knew he was going to make an impact on me because the whole time he recruited me, we never talked about basketball. It was just about becoming a man and evolving and what I'm going through and the concerns that I have and, who I really am. And, him learning that way when I got there, he can make sure that he, through some tough love, but also through a lot of support and encouragement, make sure I became that person. And he was the first person that told me that, like you have the ability to dominate. Like prior to then, I had never been on a team where I was expected to be the top performer. And when I got there, I tried to just blend in because I was in a new environment. And he pulled me to the side, and after maybe a game or two, it was like, I don't know if you figured this out, but this is your team essentially, and in order for the team to max out its capability, you have to max out yours. Which in that first year led to me having the most successful year of my basketball career. So I give him a lot of credit for that. I'm very thankful for him for that. And then the last one is the GOAT, Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski. The 40, I think he was at Duke 40 plus years before he retired, 3 years ago. But just seeing all the different generations of Duke basketball and the fan base that he was able to build for the program, even after, his first 2 or 3 years, like his head was pretty much on the chopping block. But the athletic director at Duke believed in him and continued to believe in what he could do. And he turned it around and he became one of the most legendary coaches. And the biggest thing I learned from him is the ability to evolve. Duke is a very prestigious school, and they would for a long time there, they would, only recruit 4-year guys. As they, it was kind of more of a traditional. He grew up under, he's from the Bobby Knight coaching tree, so he's very traditional. But as times changed, he evolved and he started recruiting one and dones, and the game was changing. So he realized he had to change in order to continue to be successful. So I picked up on a lot of those things. And if someone as successful as him is willing to evolve, then I feel like the rest of us should have the ability to do it as well.
Wow. Oh my gosh. There's just so much that you shared in that. I want to go back to something that you said about the coach who challenged you to step more into the role of being the team lead, and that this was your team, and if we're going to have success, you're going to have to step into it. Why do you think it's so tempting for us to want to blend in? Why is that usually our first instinct to try to blend in?
I don't know. Maybe if it's not something that's in your personality naturally. I know you can kind of just get stuck in a comfort zone, but then also there's a lot of responsibility. Like obviously if you succeed, then there's a lot of praise and admiration. But if things don't go your way, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody's gonna be looking at you and taking the blame. And then it's also hard to, with being an athlete with the intense training and just so many things that you have to be accountable for. And on top of, it's like, when you're running that sprint or you're doing that last set, like it's hard individually, but it takes a lot of mental toughness to be able to push yourself through, but then also be that for other people too. Like it's easy to do it like when you're in a comfort zone, but when you're uncomfortable, it's kind of natural to become more selfish. Like I don't know if I can make this sprint. I don't know if I can, get through this last set. And when you're looked at to be a leader, once you're done with your sprint or once you're done with your last set, somebody else is right behind you finishing up there. So you got to jump right into being supportive and holding them accountable. And you're still trying to recover from what you just participated in. So it's It takes a lot of a mental toughness, and ultimately you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable on a long-term basis, and that's not easy.
That's not easy. And I've had so many guests talk about the responsibility that's associated with greatness. And I've said a couple of times, any of us can be successful by accident, right? We just happen to run out of gas and scratch a card, and you won $1 million. That's great, but let's be true. That was accidental success. But can you say, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to go through in order to get it, and then go make it happen, right? That's something totally different. And with that step into greatness comes responsibility that I think a lot of people, wisely, a lot of people say, I don't know that I want that responsibility. What's your take on the industry of podcasting right now? Because this, I mean, to your point, this is almost like the third element of media. Everybody's got a podcast. Every movie star's got a podcast. Every rapper's got a podcast. Every basketball player in the NBA has a podcast. Everybody's got a podcast. Where do you think that this is going? Has it become so available, so easy to launch that it's losing its value, or is this still a space where a lot of people go to in order to get critical insight? What's your take on this?
So first, I think because I mean you're right. It has become very saturated, and a lot of people have created them. I just think ultimately, like the test of time, you just have to be consistent. Like most of the people that start podcasts are not going to stick with it. So if you just never stop, eventually you're going to get where you want to go or close. But I think also because of so many people in the game now, like in order to stand out, the quality of the podcast has to be there too. Like when there's a low, from a production standpoint and also from a content standpoint, like when everybody's doing something, it's harder to stand out. So you gotta push the envelope. It creates an atmosphere of more creativity and for people to look at ways to switch things up from the norm. But ultimately, I think it's here to stay. Obviously, it's become a multi-million, probably multi-billion-dollar industry at this point. And as from a consumer standpoint, I mean, you have a lot more options. You have to sift through more to kind of find the things that resonate with you. Everything that's being presented to you is not for you. You have to find, the particular genre that works for you. But like I said, ultimately, I think it's here to stay. I'm excited to see how it continues to evolve. And as someone who works in the industry, yeah, I'm looking forward to the continued evolution, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. So talk a little. We were talking a little bit earlier about you being an R&B dude, and I threw out the name Prince, but that was kind of that was a softball because Prince dips into so many different genres of music. I mean, he's one of the best. He's one of the best rock guitarists I've ever seen ever. He can do R&B. He can do some pop. He was everywhere. But who are some real dudes or ladies in the R&B genre that you really believe sets the tone for what R&B music is or could be?
So yeah, I'll kind of go blast from the past first, and then kind of go into more recent. But I mean, R&B is like so nostalgic for me, like the '90s, 2000s era. Like my parents, that's all they listened to. Well, maybe it's not all they listened to, but that's all they listened to around us because it was more appropriate for younger audiences as well. A lot of things weren't as explicit; they were more implicit at that time, so you were able to enjoy them as a kid. But my dad was a huge Mary J. Blige fan, so that she has the label as the queen of R&B, and I'm gonna stand and I'm gonna co-sign that. So I honestly think her "Share My World" album is the best R&B album in my opinion. And I have a lot of experience from going on vacations, going on these long rides like Disney World and going to Braves games, and my parents just blasted Mary J. Blige the whole time. So I'm always put her at the top of the list. But listen, a lot of Monica, a lot of Drew Hill, a lot of Jagged Edge, a lot of Usher. That's just the era that I came up in. So while I do give the new stuff an opportunity, if it's not catching me, I always somehow end up listening to all the people I just mentioned. And as me working in audio production, I have a probably more of a regard for producers than the average person. So from an R&B standpoint, Dark Child, or Rodney Jerkins as his real name, is probably my goat as far as that era. This group kind of did hip hop and R&B, but Track Masters, they had a lot of good stuff out during that time. Jermaine Dupri, he was very versatile, worked with Mariah Carey. Obviously, he wrote and founded groups, got Escape, Usher. He produced for Jagged Edge, Brian Michael Cox. They collaborated on a lot of stuff. So, man, I love, every now and then, like based off my like YouTube algorithm, anything related to that'll pop up. So if B Cox does an interview, or Dark Child has a new interview, Tank and Jay Valentine have the R&B Money podcast, where they have a lot of people who that I may not necessarily knew by name, but once I listened to the episodes and found out, they were a writer for this label, or they did Ghost Production, or they were engineering, all encompassing as far as the R&B genre. I love to indulge in stuff like that, so that's just who I am.
Yeah. What's an example of something that you can pick up from listening to other producers or listening to interviews from other producers that carry over into the kind of work that you do?
I mean, one thing that I mentioned earlier is just the evolution. A lot of these producers, when they got in the game, everything was analog. It was the old school way of doing things. And once everything went digital and all you had to have a computer and Pro Tools, which is like the industry standard, it kind of streamlined things, and, in turn, it made making music, a lot more accessible to the average person. But I don't think that's always a bad thing. Like, as things evolve, new styles of production, back then a lot of people used like the drum machines, and, now people just, use digital keyboards, MIDI, all that type of stuff. So if those guys, like I mentioned with Coach K, if those guys can, inject the new technology into, the quality of the old school, because I'm always going to be biased. I sound like an old guy now. Everybody thinks the generation of music that they grew up in is the best. So I'm not going to veer too far from that. But a lot of those guys do, inject like newer influences, and they don't completely disregard what's new. They sprinkle it in, but they still have that foundation from the eras that they were in. So I'm gonna just double down on evolution, never saying stagnant. Obviously your style, and there are a lot of things that you carry with you that'll stand the test of time, but it's never too, I don't think you're ever too good to the possibility of exploring. Maybe within that exploration, you may realize that it worked for you. You may realize that it's not, but the open-mindedness is something that I think is important ultimately.
Oh, man, there's so much wisdom in what you just shared. And I can't believe how fast the time is going by. Share with everyone, a little bit about how they can get a hold of you if they want you to add to what they're trying to do, even if it's just from a consultative standpoint, because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. And as I said earlier, I just really appreciate the fact that you were willing to be a thought partner with me, and that you were able to add some top spin to what I was doing without changing the essence of what I was trying to do. And I really appreciate that, because very often you get experts and they want to take over and they want to say, just sit back and I'll do this thing for you, but I'm going to do it my way. And you laid back in the cut. You figured out what I was doing, and then you found a way to add to it in a way that still maintained the voice and the essence of what I was trying to do. So how can people get a hold of you if they want some of that for themselves? And what are some final words that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Okay, so you can find me on social media. Go by Sound by Sid, so that's my handle on Instagram and Twitter. Sidney Evans on LinkedIn, and then my website is soundbysid.com. That's where you can book a we can book and call, whether it's a consultation or an inquiry, for my editing services. That's newly revamped, so I put a lot of time and energy to that. So hopefully you all will check it out. That's where you can see all the stuff that I've worked on and learn a little bit more about me and my service offerings. As a final point, I don't know. I feel like I didn't feel like preaching today, but I feel like I drove the point home as far as the evolution part of it. So I just doubled down on it, but I'm gonna triple down on it. I guess I never really, related it back to me in answering your last question, but I'm always staying abreast to trends in the podcast industry and new and innovative ways of production. Yeah, and building audiences and injecting that creativity in that thing that you created and realizing the vision that you had. So whatever field or career that you're in, I think it applies. So
Yeah. Well, hey, before you go, before we bring you into the VIP room, I would love for you to share, because I ask Audrey this all the time when she's on for the recaps. What's the value from your standpoint for people checking out the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership podcast? Because you have listened to the raw footage for every conversation that I've had. So what's the value of tuning into this show?
I think it's edutainment at its finest. You'll learn a lot of principles about leadership, which luckily is a life principle, so you can carry it with you in any environment that you go into. But then also it's a lot of laughs. You may indirectly learn a little bit about the whiskey game and all those type of things. But yeah, I just think it's a well-rounded listening experience, and I feel like something that you can share it with, a youngster. Maybe if you're a teacher or you're a professor, you can share it with them. You can share it with your peers. You can share it with your parents. So I feel like it applies to the full spectrum of generations. So something that's like that, I feel like that's specific, but also that all encompassing is something that's valuable.
Well, fantastic, man. Or something that you said in passing, I just really want to add a lot of weight to, and that is, with your help, man, you have really played an integral part in making this, what started out as a crazy idea or an interesting idea. You actually turned this into something that is being considered for some awards now. Because we've been doing this at an incredibly high level for a very long time. You actually helped me deliver against my consistency promise. Because I'm going to tell you, when I was doing this on my own, I had like 4 or 5 episodes that are yet to be edited. and it was hard to run a business, to run a show, and to edit a podcast and get it out on time. But with your help, we have successfully released a brand new episode every week for the past 2.5 years, even to the point where this past year, we started releasing 2 episodes a week. I don't know very many podcasts that are doing that, but we could do that because we had a team of professional folks who were singularly focused on doing their thing incredibly well. And man, I want to thank you for the support that you've added to the show and for helping to make the show what it's become. So with that, man, I just, again, want to say appreciation, how much I appreciate you doing that.
You're very welcome, and I appreciate you the open-mindedness to having that initial conversation, because without that, I know you're a busy guy, so it's easy to just skim over emails and I'll get back to it, or or not even seeing it as a priority to respond. And so I appreciate your open-mindedness to do that, and I appreciate the relationship we've built, and hopefully we have many more seasons and episodes to come.
All right. Well, hey, man. Well, with that, raise your glass. I'm going to raise what's left in this very, very nicely done Cassius Clay. Oh, my gosh. This is amazing. I need to make my way back out to Kentucky. I need 3 or 4 cases of this stuff. This is really, really good. But with that, man, I got to bring you into the VIP room. So for now, on this side of the velvet rope, I just want to say cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, it's not too late. Hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch the next episode. If you're really enjoying the vibe, leave us a review or become a VIP for guest and show exclusives. Cheers.